Hi. Woo! All right. I mean, you could woo a little more if you want to, but you don't have to. Hi, I'm Jennifer Sendro. I'm the producer here in the Green Space. Welcome. How many of you have never been here before? Ooh, how'd you hear about the show? Twitter, Carrie. Okay. Carrie's Twitter, Carrie. Cool. Great. Welcome. Hope I'm going to convince you to come back again. For everybody else, welcome back. We're WNYC's living room, WNYC being New York's public radio station. And we do intimate conversations, crazy performances, all kinds of stuff. We make radio and podcasts with 100 or so of our closest friends. And tonight, that's you. Silence anything you have that rings. That's the one thing I'll ask of you before we start. You can leave your phones on and you can do like really subtle photo taking without flash and tweeting and whatnot. Just don't disrupt the show. Are any of you members of WNYC? Yay, thanks. The rest of you guys, get on it. I'll even give you one of these pretty shiny pins that I'll tell you about in a second if you sign up. Everything we do is supported by our members, the Jerome L. Green Foundation, and our 2017 sponsor, Audible.com. And we do about a dozen events here in the Green Space every month. This month, we're going a little crazy, and we have 20. I'm only going to tell you about a couple. I hope you got a flyer on your way in. One, we have an artist in residence, Dessa. She's a musician and a writer, and she is bringing together artists and scientists who are going to break down what it is to fall out of love. And there is a stage prop we call the Disco Brain that is going to be erected just for this occasion. And don't you want to see what that looks like? So come on, people. It is a series called Heartbreakers. It is 4 events in May. We also have the New York Guitar Festival in residence here in May and June. We have a lot of live radio and podcasts. Brian Lehrer, who's our daily talk host here on WNYC, will be doing a live broadcast. And we're doing a brand new podcast pilot. It's called Friends for Now. I don't know how many of you have children in maybe the like 8 to 12 age range, maybe if you do, that also like really quirky game shows. But if that describes anything in your life, check it out. It's hosted by Jo Firestone. She's a really funny local comedian. And it's great. And if you just like to get weird, do any of you like to get weird? Okay. I like to get weird. So my personal favorite, next Friday, we have our monthly variety show. It's every first Friday. And this time we're going to have comedy by Wally Collins, music by Jessica Rowboat, a cooking lesson from author and chef Gabrielle Hamilton of Prune, and a performance by Dance Cartel, and lots more. So will you come back? All of you noobs who heard about it on Twitter. Please do, please do. Okay, awesome. So that's later. You're here tonight for the Penn World Voices Festival. It's the 13th year running. It takes time and money and effort of many producers and volunteers and artists to make it happen, so thank you to them and to the support of 5,000 Penn members. We're really grateful for them to partner with us to do this show tonight, and also, more importantly, because their mission is to champion the freedom to write and the power of the word to transform the world, which is pretty important all the time, and especially right now. And we agree with that here at WNYC. We just say all the words out loud after we write them down. So join them, find out more, get tickets for the other 90 events in this festival at penn.org. Now, you're probably here because you know about our guests tonight, but I'll tell you who they are anyway. Carrie Brownstein is a musician, a writer, an actress, and comedian. Her bands are Excuse 17, Wild Flag, and Sleater-Kinney. Her TV show is Portlandia. Her memoir, Hunger Makes Me a Modern Girl, in paperback in the lobby right now, was published in 2015. And Thomas Meinecke is the author of 5 novels, including Tomboy, also on sale in the lobby right now. And when he isn't writing, he plays in the experimental rock band FSK, which is Voluntary Self-Control. That sounds very Catholic school to me in a good way, and works as a club DJ in Berlin. But our host tonight might be new to you, so I'm going to tell you about her. She's new to us here at WNYC. Kathy Chu's a radio journalist and now the managing editor and co-host of a brand new podcast called Nancy. I'm sporting this pin right here. It's very cool. It launched just last month, and it is narrative storytelling in the style of This American Life, but all the stories are told from a queer perspective. It is a really awesome show. It is smart and honest and warm and necessary and totally compelling, just like the 3 people that are about to be on stage. So give it up for Kathy, Carrie, and Thomas.
Folks. Okay. Hi. Thanks everybody for coming.
We're just going to talk about the Met Ball.
Yeah. We're looking at
We're going to just do a live stream.
Have you two ever met before tonight?
Kind of. I think I may be one of the fans who came backstage or something in Germany.
We always have our fans backstage.
Or in Oslo. Or maybe really even in front of the stage.
Yeah. I think we met in Germany.
That but only briefly. Like, I'm a fan of her band. And I was, I think maybe it was in Oslo or Munich. I mean, I've seen Sleater-Kinney in both places. And I went backstage or front stage, whatever. And you said I sent you this novel. I forgot about that, actually. So
No,
I
you
sent you
did-
the German language edition of a novel where you play a role in it.
I
And you
think-
couldn't
yeah, I
read
think-
it then.
No, I could not read it. I think you sent it to Corin,
Yeah.
and she also could not read it. So she handed it. She passed it off to me, and then it's in the archives.
Yeah, it's available in English now since a couple of years. But,
Yeah. So.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with a music question, which is basically, was there a moment when you were younger when you heard something on the radio or something your parents played that like sparked the musician in you? Either of you.
Well, I think my parents had really terrible taste in music for the most part.
what were they playing?
There was a genre sort of called AM Gold. I was just asking my dad about this because I realized he was the perfect age to have seen a lot of amazing bands at the right time. You know, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. And he said, no, I saw Peter, Paul, and Mary. Okay, fair enough. Not that Peter, Paul, and Mary are terrible, but they're not the Rolling Stones. Most people would agree, even just semantically, they're different. And sonically, that they're different. So a lot of the music... Also, my dad then was really into the Eagles, which is just straight up cocaine rock. It's just just life in the fast lane, you know, Steely Knives, just lots of drugs. And my dad was not into drugs.
But not psychedelic at all.
The Eagles?
The Eagles.
No, not
No,
psychedelic.
that's what I mean. I mean, if they took the drugs, you can't even hear it in the music.
But cocaine you can hear in
Yeah.
like, I feel like Joe Walsh, like to me, he is just a body of cocaine with a mustache on top. Also, the Eagles were so gratuitous in their guitar playing. So I would say that it was mostly, I would just listen to the radio when I was a kid and just record onto a cassette. Like on the weekends, there would be like the top 40, or like Rick D's top 40. And I would just record those songs and then play back the ones that spoke to me. It was a great era for pop. You know, it was George Michael, Wham, Madonna, Michael Jackson, so that kind of stuff. I don't know if it inspired me to play, but I couldn't get enough of it. And I think that sense of that just kind of voracious appetite for music, I think really started with pop.
Mm-hmm. In my case, I mean, it's a different thing. I'm almost 20 years older than you, and I grew up in Germany. And my dad, I have kind of modernist West German parents, and they used to listen to modern jazz when I was a small child. So there was always something like Jerry Mulligan or the Modern Jazz Quartet, and I kind of I liked it. I still like it. This afternoon I bought records, like jazz records from the '60s, used vinyl in New York. So it kind of, I liked it, and I had. My parents were kind of like I said, modern West German parents, and they came home with a new Beatles single, for instance, when they went to shop or on the market on Saturdays. So I can't really complain about their taste. And my dad took me when I was 15 to a concert of Thelonious Monk.
Yeah, that's
which
a lot
really,
cooler.
you know, I mean, that shaped me. So I'm glad about my parents musically. But I'm in my case, it was a problem that when I grew up, not in your case, there wasn't really cool pop music or popular music around. I had to have in the early 70s, these ugly super groups, you know, the phallocentric guitar stuff, and I was kind of waiting for the next thing to turn up, and it took a while. I mean, you had a David Bowie record every second year, or Iggy Pop or Roxy Music. I really liked them a lot. So I knew there was something on the behind the phallocentric guitar masturbation thing. So I knew there must be something else, you know. And then it came up, but it took a while. It was punk and disco then, and then I was already 20 when that came up. So I felt like too old actually, but I really liked it, and I liked the stuff which was in New York then. So-called the no wave, no New York thing. So my band was very much influenced by bands like the Contortions or Richard Hell and stuff like that. So there was a lot of things happening, but then I was already in my early 20s. So as a teenager, I had to listen to jazz to have some nice music, because otherwise it would have been Yes.
What was the first album?
Or the Eagles, which are a crime, I think.
What was the first album?
Against humanity, yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like the Eagles. No? Okay. All right. What was the first album that you bought?
I started buying singles because I had this small amount of money which I got from my parents when I was 10 or something. I remember the first singles. There was like Painted Black by the Rolling Stones, Help by the Beatles, Sunny Afternoon by the Kinks, and Wild Thing by the Troggs. So this was all in 1966 when I turned 11. So this is what I remember. The first album was a cheap 5 Deutschmark album where bands just played hit records, like covered them because I couldn't afford to buy the real stuff. So I was kind of disappointed. There was this Get Off of My Cloud played by some no-name Dutch band, but I couldn't afford the real thing, so I had to keep that. No, albums was later. So I started very early to spend all my money in vinyl, like I did today, this afternoon.
What about you, Carrie? Do you remember?
I think Wham! Make It Big and Michael Jackson Thriller were two of my first records that I purchased, but also cassettes were just coming in and they were very portable. So that was really fun to be able to take music with you. And we take that for granted now, but it really was a way of creating private space and creating one's own sort of world inside of the song, inside of the album. So Huey Lewis Sports was probably my favorite cassette.
How old were you then?
Someone will verify this and know that I'm wrong, but I think Sports probably came out when I was 10 or 11. The internet will verify when that came out. But Sports, I think, is the most brilliant name for an album. It's just like Sports. What a genius.
So the title for the event tonight is Forbidden, Too Punk, Too Queer. Do either of you use the term punk or queer to identify yourself?
I feel like I use the word queer. I don't really use the word punk so much. I don't know. To me, these are just like modifiers that create sort of vague and complex and nuanced definitions of things that don't always help clarify anything. And I think depending on which lens you're looking through, can be misnomers. I think punk in particular is a really tricky one to sort of label yourself as because it often feels devoid of meaning or context. And I think context is always very crucial when you're, labeling. Those are such monolithic terms, but in terms of how they sound, but actually are very mutable and very multifaceted. So, I like that it's too punk, too queer. Whoa.
Are you...
We got to back up from both of that.
Are you both of those things?
Too queer for what?
Too punk for what? I don't know. Certainly for this chair, I think.
I like the terms. Both of them. I like the term queer very much because it reminds me of a time when it's almost like a historical term already because it reminds me of the time when you didn't have the long LGBT something chain. Yes. Where I think something happens right now where you have within the very progressive movement, and I'm really behind that. Also the whole political correctness thing, I'm really into it, and I really think it's the right thing to do. But a funny thing happened with all these LGBT thing, opposed to the term queer, that new pockets started to come into existence, which made up their own identity thing, again with exclusion of others. So I like the term queer because it's the fluid thing. It's not a bureaucratic thing where you have all these little groups. It's more like a fluid thing. So I like it a lot. And I think it connects with punk, in my case also with disco, because it came up at the same time. Disco a little earlier than punk, but both both musical movements were opposed to the concept of a closed sovereign subject, which was always a male subject, you know. So you had punk and disco. They were both about, we are plastic, you know. We're not the big autonomous subjects like in rock music. So that was why I was so opposed to the rock music as we knew it till then. But I think still punk does have a lot of macho elements in it. Disco maybe less. So I would even prefer disco. But definitely I can, and of course then there came up these bands like Sleater-Kinney, which was like quite some time after the original punk explosion, but they made clear to me that there's always a way to be punk again and again. So it's a certain attitude to music, also to, I mean, it was like nothing had, like punk never happened when you came up with your music. It was like still not solved, you know. There was still like a revolutionary attitude to play this rock music in a different way. So it's, to me, it's like an eternal way to turn to things, to call it punk again and again, maybe. Not like a historical kind of 3 chords, 3-minute songs, but an attitude.
Yeah. Oh, has there been any musicians or writers that influence the way you see punk?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like currently or when I was younger. I guess when I was younger, certainly, I mean, I feel like Prince was someone who occupied a very liminal space in terms of identity, and I liked that fluctuation. I liked that sense of freedom and sexuality and fluidity, and I liked the honesty in his songs. I liked the shape shifting. Later, Patti Smith, I remember hearing Gloria for the first time, and changing authorship, changing the narrator. I really love that. And then it was mostly when I discovered bands from Olympia and started Olympia, Washington, and started actually seeing music live. That to me really changed it, because it's one thing to hear something, to hear an experience. It's another thing to witness it in person and to be able to sort of just feel in that moment a connection that very much transcends all these sort of morphologies, and just to get into just the physical, visceral space, that really unleashed a lot of things for me. And those are bands like Heavens to Betsy and Bikini Kill and Carp and Unwound, men and women that were making very sort of raucous, unhinged noise, and very unafraid of their own noise, to borrow a phrase that Grail Marcus used.
Yeah, I can understand that. And in my case, it was like when we started, I'm playing in this funny band FSK. When we started in 1980, it was still, we felt like we were post-punk, but we were listening to like Richard Hell or Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, like this New York stuff, and also Pere Ubu and stuff. And it was, and Gang of Four from England, which was also important for your band, I can hear. So they were important for us as an influence, but we felt already like this is after punk now. But there was a big influence. The Contortions were a big influence. I've just seen James Chance of the Contortions live in Vienna last year, and he's still like that. I don't know if I want to really get to know him, but on stage, it's just perfect. It's that harmonic punk,
Yeah, I think I prefer artists who I feel like I would never want to get to know them.
Well, people are here to get to know you, so.
All right.
Okay, so maybe connecting your music to writing. So Thomas, you kind of write in this unique style that borrows from your DJing in Berlin. Can you talk a little bit about how you, what it is, pop literature, I think is what it's called, and how you go about creating that?
Yeah, the thing is, I'm not only doing it in Berlin. It only sounds so good, if you can play at the Berghain or something. I'm an occasional club DJ, so I do a lot of when I play at clubs, I play house music, mostly actually African American gay house music. So I think the whole, that's another thing, we're talking about queerness. I'm very much influenced as a heteronormated. What am I? Hetero. As a hetero, I'm very much influenced by.
You're part of the het set, I think.
Yeah. I'm very much influenced by gay subculture. So the whole camp thing, which can go back to vaudeville or music hall or whatever, minstrelsy. So disco, of course. And so I'm very much influenced by that. But the other thing is the whole African American experience about dislocation and playing music, which is not from... like being not on the, like being dislocated, like being not from where you're from, which is always good in a way, you know. So that's always a challenge, and I think African American music did it a lot. That you had like a recontextualization, reconfiguration of music patterns, maybe that you had known before, like in bebop. When suddenly the bebop musicians, they played the swing standards in a way that they were not detectable anymore. You didn't know that it was How High the Moon when Charlie Parker played Ornithology. So it was called Ornithology then. It was still the same changes. So when that was a thing which is like signifying you. You don't not the so you speak in tongues in a way, and that's what is a great thing I think with African American music, with jazz, P-funk, Sun Ra, whatever, you know, the whole Afro-diasporic thing. So I'm influenced by like bebop, DJ culture, where you have the sampling, where you put something from a context, put it into another context, which may not be even audible anymore, but it means something to the person who did it. So, and of course, in a DJ set, you have 2 turntables and 2 records, and you mix them together and produce something third, which maybe is not even included in one of the 2 records. And so this is kind of the ideal for my writing. So I do a lot of quoting. My novels are very full of theories. There's always a lot of theory involved, like feminist theory in my case mostly, but also could also be like a novel from Flaubert, you know, the French writer from the 19th century. So it could be, and it's all kind of intertwined, and it's like playing more than one record at the same time. And I remember when my second novel came out in America as in an English translation, it's called Pale Blue, that some lecturer, he went through it and put like 200 or 300 quotation marks in the text. And I said, you can't do it, because I don't even know anymore if the sample is in its original form there. I may have changed 2 or 3 words. It's like equalizing. You do something with the material. It's not really anymore what it used to be. But that's kind of an interesting thing. So I'm not really interested, to put it short, in my own words. I'm more interested in what's around, and I take it and combine it in a different way. And that's been compared a lot to the work of a DJ. And I came up with that too, but it's kind of tiring in a way, because it's always like, yeah, he's the one who writes like a DJ, and I'm also a DJ. But still, I am influenced by DJ culture, like the early rap producers, and of course also the techno and house guys.
And Carrie as well, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, when they came up, it was right when I started to listen to Detroit techno. You suddenly had the Riot Girl bands, and I felt, and it's also a topic in my novel Tomboy, which was written right then in 1997. I thought it was really interesting to have these 2 elements. Like, there are these women on stage, and there's these guys producing this kind of oceanic, fluid, monotonous sounding, but kind of related to what I like in feminist deconstruction, that you care about the small elements which are changing the modulations, you know. So it wasn't opposed to each other, but it was both at the same time. So I thought I liked it, that I really was a fan of the Riot Girl movement, because then I felt like, okay, rock music being played by women is is kind of better. Then I can cope with it. Still no solos, I know, and hardly any solos. But there were great solos also, like, again, in the late 70s, like Robert Quine with Richard Hell. He played like 10 seconds of great sparkling or splittering guitar solos. So no, I liked rock music again when I listened to all these bands from the Pacific Northwest.
Mm-hmm. And Carrie,
but I was already quite into electronic music then also.
And Carrie, you've written a lot of different kinds of things. You've written music criticism, you've written a memoir, you write scripted TV. What do you get from each form of writing?
I mean, I think I would consider writing the through line, the thing that connects all the seemingly disparate projects and creative endeavors on which I work. I don't know if I get something specific from each thing or something different from each thing. I think it really has a lot to do with the discipline of it. Certainly with writing for television and writing for Portlandia, I think there is an absurdity that I don't necessarily like to marry with music. I've never really found music, at least in the vernacular that I play it in, humor. I mean, there's some elements of tongue-in-cheek and a little bit of irony, but for the most part, there is a overarching earnestness to it. But I think that I, in some ways, in my just day-to-day life, tend to make more sense of things through the lens of absurdism or surreality. I think that really helps explain to me a lot more of what's going on, or sometimes finding the truth or essence of something through absurdism, to me is something that I'm always kind of seeking. And so Portlandia, I think, definitely allows me to do that. Some of the humor writing I've done, like a piece in the New Yorker or whatnot, I think that tends to be more humor writing. My memoir, I wasn't really approaching it from that, but that was very specific. So I think what I get is just it's a way of having more long form ideas and kind of, getting to a subject and letting it unspool and hopefully finding an answer that I didn't know I was seeking.
Is there one form that's harder than the other, or one that you enjoy more?
That I enjoy? Well, I do enjoy collaborative work. So I think writing for television is collaborative. And I like sitting in a writer's room and getting to exchange ideas with multiple people who all have different perspectives. I think that's very important, because what you come to is a sort of multidimensional take on something. And that's how I write with Slater-Kinney as well, where it's a collaboration between Corin and Janet and myself. So I think I enjoy that more. In some ways, I feel more proud of my memoir, because that was an autonomous endeavor, which for me is rare. But I would say that was not fun.
Oh, writing the memoir?
Yeah, I mean, just, the process, there's nothing glamorous or dreamlike about sitting down and writing. There's no way of circumventing it. There's nothing that expedites it. You are always, the task is before you every day. Yeah. And there's really no one there to aid you. No one can edit something or give you feedback unless it's there.
Written.
Yeah, so it's, it's a lot less fun.
So did you rely on your diaries with that? I was thinking of that, because if you have such a long time in a band and write about that time, and you had all these little details, did you go back to your diaries and reconstruct it in a way, or was it just out of memory?
It was both. I mean, memory, of course, is unreliable, and when you're constructing a memoir, you do have to sort of realize how tendentious it's going to be. I wrote a lot of letters to people, that some of them which I asked for back temporarily to have evidence of a specific experience on tour. I have notebooks. I'm not a journal writer, though. I take notes.
I just read the book, and it's quoted somewhere that I wrote in my diary something. I think you wrote it in maybe it's a translation problem.
Yeah.
I wrote it I read it in German.
Yeah.
That sometimes it comes up with a diary.
Oh yeah, it might have been like I wrote in a journal or something. Yeah, I don't I don't have, copious diaries or anything like that.
And where do you draw the line between what you're going to share with the world and what you're going to keep private for yourself?
I feel like that's fairly simple to do. It seems like I'm always interested in constructing a story, and having that there be not necessarily, I don't want to thematize everything, but I do like to, I wanted to explore certain themes and a certain narrative that was about sort of growing up feeling on the outside and kind of the journey to feeling a sense of embodiment through community and through music. And so I drew from those experiences and kind of let stories and instances from my life that didn't, weren't germane to that narrative. I didn't share those. And also there was no reason to be salacious or tawdry. And I don't really have stories like that. We were a fairly square band, I will say. I wanted to write Motley Crue's Dirt, but it didn't turn out like that.
A square punk band?
Yeah. I think a lot of punk bands are quite square.
Is that true?
Yes, I would say very true. I think, a huge portion of punk music was straight edge and were people that I think were purposely like eschewing like this ostentatiousness and this, sort of flamboyancy that they saw as excessive, because excess is in so many ways synonymous with capitalism and with commerce. So there were a lot of the punk ethos was about, removing yourself from sort of that costume of excess. So for a lot of bands, that even meant, sort of the body as a temple, the body as, a place that, where you weren't going to allow sort of this infiltration of toxicity.
Yeah.
A lot of square punk bands, and all of the anger and the wildness was in the songs. And I think that's why you get, if you have somebody that's never drinking, never, sort of not engaging in some of the frivolity that many other people are, then you get music that is abutting a very dangerous place sometimes. And sometimes that is an amazing transcendent place, and I think you hear a lot of that, especially in hardcore. There was a lot of that in hardcore punk music.
So Thomas, you write a lot from different perspectives you write a lot about people who are very different from yourself. How do you go about writing your characters authentically?
I don't really believe in authenticity. So it's more about the artificial elements of characters. And the characters kind of grow within my books by what they read, what they listen to. So I don't even have a plan in advance to say this person is 32 years old and she was misused as a child or something. It's like something which comes up after 100 pages. Suddenly I feel like, oh, this person must be like 32, but not abused. So something. It's like I'm not into psychology so much in my books. I'm really interested in psychology, but in my books it's more like the characters coming into existence through the process of writing, about reception of what they read, what they listen to. So suddenly they get their contours, and so I have a lot of readers who say they really. Can identify with the figures in my novels, and I think, and the ones who don't like my novels, they say there are no characters at all. So that may be just both the same thing, that you can just like enter it and go with that name through 300 pages, and I'm also not. We said it's far from my own experiences, since I draw so much from what I've read somewhere, and being a fan of positions like African American or gay or lesbian or transgender culture. I've learned so much from voguing, for instance. If you have, it's the main topic in a way of Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, the Jenny Livingston movie about voguing. She had learned so much, and even Madonna, she just kind of took it, and made a hit record out of it, of the Vogue thing, and she just used but not abused. I think those protagonists of the voguing scene, like Willie Ninja, for instance, I think it's if you're I used to say I'm a fag hag, you know, and people always say, no, you're not a fag hag, you're a man. You can't be a fag hag. Fag hags are women. So I said, okay, then I'm not a man, but I want to be a fag hag, you know. And then I said, in the end, now I think that's now the term fag stag for people like me, men who like gay men, for instance. That's what I've heard. That somebody told me in Texas. That's now it's called fag stag.
I'm learning so much.
What you're learning? So yeah, faghead would have been fine with me, you know. But everybody said no, you're not, because that's women. So I said I don't. It doesn't matter. So I'm really very often I'm writing from a fan position. So like I read Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, and I learned so much from it. It became like there's other authors from an older generation who said they're Marxist writers. I feel like I'm a deconstructive feminist writer, and I've learned it from Judith Butler, and. So it doesn't have to do so much with my life in a way. It does have, actually. I am sitting here as a man, and I had to become this man. And this is really interesting. I think the hetero life is as interesting in terms of gender studies as the so-called not normal. You know, so I'm thinking it all applies to me as well, but I'm learning so much from marginalized positions like the gay, lesbian, trans positions, or the African American positions. So that's all I'm learning from that, and I think I don't have to be really part of the. I am part of the problem, being a man. You know. Yeah.
Carrie, can you talk a little bit about the process of you writing?
I love this. This is great.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of writing your memoir? Like, how did you do it? Because writing is a hard thing to do, you know.
Well, imagine a computer, and you open it up in the morning. How did I do it? Well, I mean, I feel like I answered this a little bit before. I mean, honestly, there just is no way around it. I just wrote it. I mean, it took about 2 years. Outlines are very important. I had a reader, this friend and author, Chelsea Johnson, and I would send her, essentially essays, and it's kind of good to have one person. I have an amazing editor at Riverhead, Jeff Klosky. He kind of came in later to sort of, help with, here are questions that I have about this or that. But my friend Chelsea was very instrumental in just kind of the discussion, the process of, okay, what about this? I'm thinking about, this topic or this chapter. So that was very helpful. But honestly, it was just getting up very early. I think best between about 5 and 7 in the morning. And then I'm an early riser. Oh my God. And then you write. If you write for a couple hours, then you can start day drinking at like 11. No, I didn't. I did not day drink. But I mean, it just that's such an impossible thing to answer. I mean, the easiest answer is I outlined it, and then I filled it in, and it took a long time.
Are you somebody that struggles with discipline like I do?
That was such
it's an honest question.
Vulnerable question that you shared so much with us there.
I know.
With a nervous, self-deprecating laugh. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely I'm not impervious to lacking self-discipline. I think that's why and ritual and routine are very important to me. Once I incorporate those two things, it creates an infrastructure from which I can work and within and a space that I can work within. If I don't have that, if I don't adhere to that, if I don't adhere to a daily sort of discipline of knowing I'm going to get up at a certain time. I'm going to set the alarm. It's going to be, set the alarm. When I was really working on it, I would set the alarm for 5. I usually wake up on my own around 6:30 if I'm working on something. I know that I can't check email. I can't look at the internet until I have coffee and write a little bit. And then I'll sort of allow myself to be more porous to the rest of the world. But I mean, I think most people would be lying if they said that they never procrastinate. I think I really found amazing ways of procrastinating. I even ordered something off Goop. And that was like a deep, deep dive. That was just an ascension into I was just in heaven, really, just ordering off that. But there's so many ways that you can navigate your own fall. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in addition to writing and music, you are an actor. Besides Portlandia, you are in Carol and Transparent. What is it about performing as somebody else other than yourself that you enjoy?
Well, I think I like working with other directors and sort of getting to interpret the writing, the work of someone else. I think it's a way of exploring personhood that, I don't get to do, that you don't sort of have license to do without seeming like an insane person. I think that's what's great about performing live as a musician, is that you get to try on roles and sort of audition versions of yourself that in day-to-day life you do tend to become more ossified the older you get, and just we are who we are, and to suddenly become a different person, you will pretty much be labeled insane. So it's what's nice about I guess getting to act and be and like on playing Sid on Transparent is just that exploration of relationships and the exploration of a different sort of psychology and what makes someone tick. So that I really do enjoy that. But I would say out of all the things I do, it's sort of the thing I'm least pursuing, I guess.
And Thomas, do you prefer writing? Do you prefer DJing? What is your favorite mode of creativity?
I just got into all this without having really a plan. So I started with a magazine in 1978 called Mode und Verzweiflung, which you would translate as fashion and despair. And it was meant to be.
That's the theme of the Met Ball tonight.
It was like a Roxy music. It was meant to be like a Roxy music phrase, Mode und Verzweiflung. And from that, there came this band into existence, Freiwillige Selbstkontrolle. It's not so much a Catholic thing like I heard in the introduction. It's the name of the German self-censorship institution within the film industry. We just took that name. It's called Freiwillige Selbstkontrolle, FSK. You have it as a small sign on the movie posters in Germany, and it tells you from which age on you may go into a certain movie. 0, 6, 12, 18, 16. So we just borrowed that, and it was meant like a tongue-in-cheek anti-punk thing to call ourselves like that. And when we went on the stage like Kraftwerk, we didn't move, we didn't talk to the people. We wore these German West German post. We wear these German army clothes, and we didn't talk to the people. It was a very new wave idea, So so suddenly there was this band, and then I started to write little texts. I started to write the lyrics for the band, which were always in German, and even if we played in England and America, it was always in German. Funny enough, and. So I got into being a musician. I started doing radio work. I'm still a radio DJ. Been doing this since 1985 now. And I was a writer. And when somebody asked me, what is your profession? I couldn't come up with an answer. Only when there was my first novel, which was in 1996. I was already getting 41 then. I felt like, yeah, I'm a novelist, I'm a writer. And then suddenly I was like between 40 and 50, I was treated as a young upcoming writer, funny enough. So still new to me in a way. And I don't know, now I'm living from writing books. I can make a living from it. It's not really the sales figures of the books. It's more the whole context. So I'm getting invited a lot to panels and universities, and I'm reading every week somewhere from the books. So I can make a living from it. And I started to call myself, I'm a writer. But I'm also a musician, but I'm of course a non-musician. Like Brian Eno said, treatment of guitar, I'm not a good musician, but I'm actually the worst musician in my band. That makes me play the most instruments, on the other hand. So the others do have their instrument, they're good on it. I'm bad with my 5 instruments, but I'm still, as a non-musician, I feel fine, I feel like this is something else. I'm in our case, and that's also something like a similarity with Slater-Kinney, there's a lot of songs, but it's a small similarity because you're very much about yourself. The two subjects who write the songs, there's a lot of personal stuff involved with Corinne's and your songs, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. But then you also have these topical songs like music about music, in a way. Some of the songs are. And in our case, it's maybe the main thing. Writing about other musicians, about the yodeling cowboys, or having a polka, but then it is about the free jazz guitarist Sonny Sharrock. And then people say, why do they yodel when they talk about the plectrum of Sonny Sharrock? So in our case, it's very complicated, but I like that. So it's an art school band, you could say. It's not so much about us. 4 of the 5 members do sing. I write the lyrics, but we do a lot of cover versions. For instance, we played a lot of GI songs about the German Fräuleins, where Fräulein always rhymes on Rhine. Then even Munich is on the Rhine because you have the next line where it has to be Fräulein. So we like to point out these things, and we did a lot in England. We played a lot in England in the 80s. There was this DJ John Peel who kept inviting us a lot, and he liked it. And he couldn't speak German, but he liked it. And so we came up with all these cover versions, like playing Beatles songs or GI songs about German Fräuleins and the Rhine. So people knew that how intertwined and funny our music is also. So there's the equivalent in the text, So I was a musician, I was a radio DJ, and I wrote books, and I was glad that nobody really asked me, what is your profession?
So you love all of them, is what you're saying. You love all of your career.
Yeah, and DJing, I only started playing in clubs, late night, and in clubs when I was already 40.
Got it.
But that's a good thing, you're in the gray zone, they don't see you really. They just dance.
So before we go to audience questions, think of your questions now. In our current political climate.
No. No.
What?
Just what
I didn't get it. Political comments?
Political climate.
Just how do you guys feel when you read the newspaper?
How do you feel? Well, I thought that David Remnick wrote something pretty apt in his in the most current New Yorker about the first 100 days, or that we no longer have sort of the privilege of tuning out politics, that it's a constant onslaught. I would say that in some ways that is a pretty apt summation of my own feeling, is that I wish I could be, it's not that I want to be disengaged, because I don't think I've ever been someone disengaged from culture and politics and the personal and the political, but it is very, I feel like we're white knuckling it right now. Mm-hmm. That's not a very pleasant place to be. We are, certainly in that, as Auden put it in his poem back in the day, The Age of Anxiety. That's how it feels. What did you think I was going to say? I feel great.
No.
I mean, it's just this topic. It's just like, what are we supposed to say? It feels terrible.
Yeah.
Maybe Thomas feels differently.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, maybe I feel different because I remember when we recorded 3 albums in the States in the 90s in Richmond, Virginia, and all our American music friends. Sometimes we knew better as Germans what the names of the ministers or something like government members were in the States than they, because they felt they are so far off with their bohemian existence and their alternative bands, and it doesn't have anything to do with us, Washington, they said. And we do have Washington in our TV news in Germany every evening anyway, you know.
How fun.
Always. And so, no, but that's so funny, because then I felt, of course it does have something to do with you, and they felt like not. And now it kind of changed.
Yes,
So that may be a little bit different position. For me, it's not really changed so much, because that has always been the topic, and it's always been complicated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. I think that there are, for many people, they never had the privilege of distancing themselves from politics, because there was always a way that our system was forcing an inequity or a disenfranchisement. And for other people, this is really the first time that, you know, there's a sense of loss or disinheritance. So I do think that not everyone, this feeling of fear and anxiety is not new for everyone. It's new for some people. And I do think, I mean, you're definitely speaking to, I think, a sense of privilege and ease that people had to divorce themselves from government and, you know, civic discourse in life that most people don't quite feel anymore. I mean, I don't know if everyone in America can name the cabinet members still, but I think more people can because because we don't like them. I'm just kidding. We like them all.
Well, on that note, audience questions.
Nothing about politics.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just
I think there's mics going around, so do you...
In the current political climate.
Wait, is that a joke?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yes and no. How important do you think queer visibility is, and do you think the significance has changed in the current political climate?
Oh, boy.
Do you want to answer that, Kathy? I feel like you haven't.
I don't.
Okay, I mean, visibility has always been important. I don't think that we get to like be reductive now or go backwards. I mean, I think it's just as important. Maybe more so. I mean, you asked me to quantify something, so I'm just going to answer it in a quantifiable way. Yes, it's important, equally, and perhaps more.
I agree with Carrie.
Hi. So when I watch Portlandia, one of the things I see is this like one of the most incisive like skewering of white culture that I have ever seen. And it just made me think at some point, because part of what I associate with whiteness, right, is this like ability to not look at whiteness. So to me, Portlandia has this like looking down lens. So I wonder if you could speak to, and I guess it is a personal question in your life, was there a moment that like made it possible, that inspired this like changing lens on white culture? Because there's such this awareness, which to me is almost like in opposition to what is the privilege that comes with being white. Do you see what I'm talking about? Like, was there like a transition in how you think about whiteness and white culture?
I mean, that's difficult to answer, but I do think that I appreciate that you see that aspect of Portlandia, because I do think that is something. I mean, I hesitate to speak for everyone involved with Portlandia, because we all approach the comedy and the writing from a different perspective, and we are not a homogenous group. But I do find that, you know, sort of, it's a conversation about privilege, and it's a conversation about good intentions that are thwarted or misguided, and the ways that people sort of curate their lives around, I guess, sort of a narcissism, where they forget that there are sort of bigger problems. I think that's always something that I've thought about, and I don't think that we realized when we first started Portlandia that was part of what the conversation was. But the more we started to explore one's relation to place and saw the cities that we lived in and the people who we were friends with or in our communities, a sense of being displaced or a change that was very, gentrification or various sort of changes or growth that benefited some people and put other people at a disadvantage. I think we started to use the show as a way of talking about that. And but I don't think there was sort of a light bulb moment, but I do think that there was definitely, it sort of dovetailed with, I think, a lot of the ways people were thinking about these cities that they lived in, that, maybe this apex of, these little niche communities that were becoming more and more homogenous were not actually the sort of utopia that we were aspiring to.
Now that queer punk bands have more visibility, there is still the issue that critics tend to write about them in a way that's kind of patronizing. What do you think is the best way for music writers to discuss queer punk bands today?
I feel like I've answered all the questions, so Thomas, Kathy.
I don't really know, actually. I can't. So better you answer it.
Really? Okay. Well, I don't know. Be a good writer. Don't have a positive imagination when using adjectives. I don't know. I mean, honestly, sometimes I just. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think good writing is good writing. I think it's also okay to make mistakes. Everybody feels like they're walking on eggshells with discourse. Like, discourse is okay. Argument is fine. We don't need to be in a time where we're not saying anything because we're afraid to say things. I think being engaged, being informed, even if that is to the extent of making an error, is okay. And I think so. I'd rather have somebody sort of try and maybe fail harder.
I mean, there's a big change, has been a big change since, for instance, the fanzine culture in the 90s or in the 70s even. I mean, the whole punk fanzines, they came up with the first punk movement in the 70s. And even before, you could say Howl or something would be already something like it, maybe even. So the whole situation has changed a lot since digitalization and the social networks. So there is a difference. It's worth thinking about it, how you could still take up that position, like being a personality within the fanzine culture, and now being a part of the long threads.
Yeah, and I think it also just has to do with a general sort of distrust of the notion of expert anymore. So I mean, when people so rarely have any faith in criticism or authority, that I think it's hard for anyone to kind of come at a subject or a review without somebody else feeling like their emotions sort of override the the worthiness, the value of the critique itself. So I mean, I think it's just a larger issue of the sort of the deterioration of criticism and just kind of our lack of faith in it, for better or worse. So I don't know if somebody's going to be able to write about something in a way that pleases everyone at this point, or in a better way. I mean, to me, like, couching this criticism, like, is that is it pleasing to everyone? I don't think criticism is supposed to be pleasing to everyone, and I'd rather have, but I think that we kind of are in a place where, like, the notion of criticism seems like an affront to our sensibilities, which is fine. But it also means it's going to be really hard for somebody to write a review of a queer punk band that everyone likes, or a review of any band that everyone likes. That's not going to happen in this day and age. And it didn't happen before. It's just that we didn't hear the voices of dissent. So, but I think to be a critic, or, to try to write something, and if your missive is to please everyone or not offend anyone, you probably shouldn't be writing.
I think expertism has also always been a problem in music journalism. And through the new situation with the internet, you can always get your information anyway, in a way, and you don't have these nerds anymore, telling you who's able to play an instrument or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, most people, we talk, there is sort of this bubble. People read the writers that they trust, so I feel like it's just as easy now to, if somebody, sometimes you read something that you disagree with because it's part of a learning curve, and you realize it's instructive to come at things from different perspectives. But most of us have kind of curated our lives to, sort of cut out the things that feel negative. And I do think that's not necessarily a good thing, but I think that's sort of where we're at right now.
Anybody else?
Hi.
Hey.
All right. So this is about directing.
Okay.
And you've directed episodes of Portlandia and the Kenzo piece, which was awesome too. And I was wondering how you liked directing, and also if you can see yourself writing and directing a feature film, or
I have directed a couple more TV shows coming up, and that haven't aired yet. And yes, there are two things that I can't talk about yet, but yes, I definitely am very interested in directing more. I feel like it's a nice kind of coalescence of things that it's sort of adding the visual element of the writing that I do, and being able to marry the two in a way that I find compelling. So yeah, that out of all the things, I was telling someone recently that directing is the only thing I enjoy while I'm doing it. Aside from playing live, there's only two things: playing live and directing, and that's very rare. There's so many things, like writing my book, I did not enjoy while I did. I loved, the Dorothy Parker, expression, I hate writing, I love having written. It's probably a paraphrase. Anyway, that's very true. Same with actually shooting Portlandia. There are days that are really fun, but for the most part, I'm so relieved when it's over. But directing, I enjoy. I cannot wait to get to set. I love prepping. I love working with the various departments, collaborating with production designers and the DP. And to me, it is so akin to playing live that I cannot wait to sink my teeth into more of it. And I'm really excited to do that.
Other people?
There's somebody?
Hi. So kind of a personal question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but...
Who is it for, Thomas?
No, sorry, Thomas. It's for you, Carrie.
I can't see you, so...
Hi. How and when in your life did you learn to feel comfortable with your gender, your sexuality, and other aspects of your identity that are important to you? And how did that change your work? Your work, your music, writing.
I don't know. I feel like there's certain parts of myself that I don't feel comfortable with. I feel comfortable with my gender and my sexuality. I guess it's just a journey, I guess. I don't know. I think the older you get, the best part of being older is just not giving a shit about a lot of things. And you hear so many people, you hit 40 and you're just like, fuck that, I don't care. That's for someone else to worry about. And so even though it's so pat, that whole it gets better thing, even if you're applying it to just your fashion choices or your hair, it's really true. I can look at an outfit I wore last week and be like, I still don't have it, but slowly I'm figuring stuff out. And I think, but I will say that I know it's hard, and for some people it is dire, and you need a community and friends and family to allow you the complexity and the unknowing. And without that, it can be very dark. But I think if you can, embracing the not knowing is also okay. That is where a lot of really great work and art and love comes from, are those places where you don't know, where you have not landed solidly upon a perch. And so if you're in a place where you don't know, try to do something with that and know that you will get to a place of comprehension and understanding, a deeper sense of self, but to embrace all of the vicissitudes, all of the longing, all of the things you don't have yet, faith that you'll get there, hold that in your heart, but also just do great art with the time that you don't know. Because not knowing, trust me, when people know and they're making art, you feel it and you're like, ugh, so entitled. On the other hand, confidence is a good thing that you'll grow into.
So across all your mediums that you're involved in, it seems like storytelling, I'm sorry, it's for you again. But it seems like storytelling is at the core, and I was wondering how you actually approach writing your guitar parts and how that might contribute to writing in a way that words can't necessarily get your story across.
I think for me, guitar playing is more of a compensatory act in the ways that I can't sing. You know, I'm very much a punk singer. My range is small. I'm so lucky to collaborate with Corin Tucker, who to me has, you know, one of the most distinct voices in music. There's just no one that sounds like her, and that's I could not be more fortunate to be her friend and her collaborator. So guitar for me is a way of matching and explaining sort of my side of the story in a language that I can use, and that gives me a broader range. So I see it. I don't see it as a way of sort of explaining, you know, I guess if there is a story to be told, it's that story. It's this story. My guitar playing is a story, as a conversation between Corin and I.
And another guitar.
Yeah. And her singing voice.
So it was like a two guitar thing.
Thomas will fill in when I can't explain myself.
No, but I mean, music is so much about unrecognized knowledge, and it's so great. I mean, in jazz, they have the term to dig something, you know. It's another way of understanding. And so music is always, for a writer, I think music is always like a dream thing where you can't really get with words. So it starts somewhere, and it's nice to write kind of so far as words kind of don't succeed anymore to get it. So then you turn into music. So it's nice to do both things, you know, because I think music is better than text, than words. I like it more, but I'm living as a novelist, and but music is my main impact. Music is the main impact.
That's very
and it's about not knowing in advance what you're gonna write,
Yeah.
and trying to find out something also about yourself. Even in my case, where I don't write about my life, it's about finding out. You know, I wrote this novel about an airline attendant who is a man and he's not gay. And I felt like, let's see what happens in the next 300 pages. And of course, then suddenly heterosexuality was the other, you know. And I was kind of hoping that this would be the result, but I didn't really know in advance. That was by writing. So writing can also get something like playing music, where you don't know in advance what will happen. And I mean, a magical thing is being in a band where there's always more than the sum of the certain parts. There's always more. Mm-hmm. So it's a magical thing, and it's like a desire. It's a streetcar named Desire.
That's true.
How about last question?
Is there a book or song that you've read or heard recently that you really, really loved?
for both of you guys?
A song. Well, I read both the latest. One of them is kind of a reissue compendium of Rebecca Solnit, Hope in the Dark, and Mother of All Questions. I highly recommend. They're both slim volumes, very readable. The Ariel Levy book is really amazing. And I mean, I've kind of just, ever since that, the new Mount Airy record is beautiful. And then the whole plane ride and walking around today, I just listened to the new Kendrick Lamar record, and it's so good. Come on. What about you?
I read a lot of theory, and I was really impressed by Jean-Luc Nancy's books recently, the French philosopher, Nancy, and musically, I'm heavy into footwork and juke music from Chicago.
Cool.
I think that's another. It's not about lyrics a lot. I mean, and if there are lyrics, you hope that they are not meant like they sound. So you like all those pussies and hoes or something. You think, hopefully they are men, you know. So there's this kind of. I think that's also very, in many cases, true. I mean, the whole dance mania, house underground is a queer underground. So I'm not so shocked about the sexist little lines they sing, but I like the music a lot. It's totally overwhelming. You don't really know what's happening. It's like listening to Ornette Coleman in 1958. So it's I really like the many of the bass music styles coming up also in London, where you don't really know what's happening. And that's something which always challenges me. I think like maybe this will be the first music I won't really understand. But then it happens, or sometimes it doesn't happen. It never happened with heavy metal in my case. But with other, like footwork and juke, it does.
My final question for you both is, what are you working on now? What's going on now? What's up next?
I'm currently in the middle of writing the next season of Portlandia and working on my second book.
Cool.
Yeah, and I just put out a novel in Germany called Selbst, like self, which has a lot to do with Anais Nin and feminist porn. Yeah, I mean the whole, like from the 40s until now, with women writing about their bodies and turning their view onto themselves like in a selfie. That's like the Selbst thing. But then next year in America there will be a third novel of me coming out called Lookalikes. That was the last novel I wrote. And my band will have a new record out in a couple of months, a new album. And I'm putting out that just a week ago a record with a techno musician called Move D, and me has been released on a label in London. It's called On the Map. So there's a lot of things, and I haven't yet started writing the next novel. So there's always a time when I travel with the old one, and I have to start to really dislike it to write the next one.
To write the next one. All right. Well, thanks, Carrie. Thank you, Thomas, and thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.